I never considered myself a person prone to suspicion. Trust was something I held tightly, something that had always come naturally between us. We had built this life together, brick by brick. This house, our home, stood as a testament to everything we had shared, the quiet evenings spent together, the whispered promises in the dark, the laughter that used to fill the air. But today, something was different. As I stepped through the front door, a subtle shift in the atmosphere caught me, and it immediately set my nerves on edge. The door had been left ajar. It wasn't unusual, but somehow today, it felt out of place. I paused in the threshold, taking in the silence. Usually, there was a greeting, his voice, a simple, "Hey," as he came in from whatever he was doing, followed by his usual shuffle of the keys. But today, there was nothing. No hum of the television, no clink of dishes from the kitchen, no sound at all. Just silence. Thick, almost suffocating. I stood there for a moment, unsure. The house, our sanctuary, felt off. The air itself seemed too still, as though it was holding its breath, waiting for me to step further in. I set my bag down quietly, each movement measured, and my mind began to wander, filling the silence with imagined scenarios. But none of them felt right. My heart didn't race, it sank instead, weighed down by a foreboding I couldn't place. Something was wrong. I tried to push the thought away, tell myself it was just a feeling, but the longer I stood there, the more it gripped me. I could almost hear the echoes of past moments, the sound of his laughter, our shared conversations drifting through the halls, the soft footsteps as we moved through our daily routines. But now, there was nothing. No presence. Just a hollow quiet that seemed to press against my chest. I hesitated before moving further. My feet felt heavy as I walked deeper into the house. It was as if every step carried me further away from the familiarity of what was once ours. I walked past the living room, the kitchen, and continued toward the hallway that led to our bedroom. The house that had once felt like a refuge now seemed unfamiliar, as though it were shifting beneath my feet. My breath caught as I approached the bedroom door. There was no sound, no activity, just that stillness, that silence that seemed louder than anything. I didn't know what I was expecting. Maybe just a normal evening, maybe a laugh, a kiss, the comfort of routine. But as my fingers brushed against the doorframe, I felt something change. Without thinking, I opened the door. The door opened with a creak, a soft protest against the sudden shift in the air. I wasn't sure what I was expecting when I stepped over the threshold, but the sight before me stopped me in my tracks. For a moment, my mind couldn't process what I was seeing. It was as if the image in front of me didn't quite belong in the room, or maybe it was me who didn't belong. The scene didn't register at first, as though I were looking at it through a fogged glass, distant, blurry. But then the fog cleared, and the clarity hit harder than I could have anticipated. There they were, in our bed. It wasn't a loud moment, not the dramatic scene I had imagined in countless nightmares, but the quietness of it made it worse. My eyes caught the contrast between the two of them, the softness of her presence, the way she was so effortlessly comfortable next to him. And he, my husband, seemed just as at ease. It was almost as though this was a place they belonged, a space that had never been mine, a place I was never meant to be. My feet were frozen. I didn't move. I couldn't. There was no sound from them, no shifting, no realization that I had walked in. It was as if I were invisible, as if I didn't exist in that moment at all. The seconds stretched into minutes. I should have said something. I should have shouted, demanded answers, but nothing came. There were no words, just the heavy silence, the weight of their closeness, the way the room seemed to hold its breath. The woman's laughter reached me first, light and unburdened, as though she were somewhere far removed from the gravity of what was happening. It wasn't like the laugh I had heard countless times from my husband, but it was enough to break through the fog of my shock. And then I realized, it was his voice too, his laughter that I used to know so well, so intimately. But it wasn't for me. It wasn't meant for me. I wanted to move, to step forward, to confront them both with all the questions I had been too afraid to ask. But I couldn't. My body was paralyzed, my mind racing with thoughts I couldn't string together into something coherent. How long had this been going on? How had I not known? The questions whirled in my mind like a storm, but my mouth refused to open. I stood there longer than I should have, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the scene, the reality of what had been happening in a place that had always been sacred to me. The bed that was supposed to hold our dreams, our secrets, was now a space for someone else. She was there with him, in our space, and I had no place in it anymore. I didn't make a sound. The air around me felt heavy, and I was acutely aware of the smallest details. The way the light filtered through the window, casting soft, golden pools on the floor, the stillness of the room, the faintest rustle of sheets, each sound seemed to amplify the silence between us. And yet, there was no turning back. No matter how much I wished I could unsee what was now burned into my mind, I couldn't. My eyes lingered on them, despite everything inside me begging me to look away, to move, to do something. But my body refused to listen. I was frozen, caught in a moment that felt too real, too sharp, like a splinter lodged deep beneath the skin that I couldn't remove, no matter how much I tried to ignore it. I couldn't make sense of what was happening. The room, once filled with warmth and comfort, now felt suffocating. It was as if the walls themselves had shifted, closing in on me. This was supposed to be the place I could always return to, the place I felt safe, where I could always find him. But now, it was foreign, unrecognizable. My husband, the man I had shared my life with, the one who had promised me forever, was no longer the person I knew. His presence, the easy smile I had once cherished, seemed somehow distant now, strained, and unfamiliar. And she sat there beside him, effortlessly at ease, her body pressed into the bed like she belonged there. She didn't belong there. She was a stranger to me, but she seemed to belong to him in a way I couldn't understand. There was no anger, no hatred in my heart. Only the quiet realization that somehow, somewhere along the way, we had both lost our way. I watched them for what felt like an eternity, trying to hold on to some shred of clarity, some part of myself that hadn't yet crumbled. But the longer I stood there, the more I felt like a ghost, fading in and out of existence. It was as if I wasn't meant to be a part of this moment. I wasn't meant to be here. I had imagined this scene before, countless times, as any person in my position might, but I never thought it would feel like this. I never thought it would feel so quiet, so distant, as if it were happening to someone else. I had imagined shouting, confronting them both, demanding answers. I had imagined a flurry of emotions, anger, hurt, confusion. But instead, there was only a strange numbness, a hollow ache that made my heart feel heavy with each passing second. The longer I stood there, the more it seemed like the world was moving in slow motion, while I was stuck, waiting for the next moment to reveal itself. But I knew deep down that there was no next moment. The moment I was living in had already stretched into infinity. Time itself had stopped, and in that stillness, everything I thought I knew had begun to unravel. And then, it struck me. There was no confrontation here. No demand for answers. No words could fill the void in my heart, no questions could stitch the fabric of trust back together. I had expected a moment of clarity, a sudden rush of resolve. But there was nothing. Just silence. Nothing made sense anymore. I wanted to leave. To run, to get away from the suffocating air, from the quiet that seemed to stretch forever. I could feel my legs trembling, the weight of the moment pressing down on me like a physical force. I should have said something, done something, anything. But I didn't. I remained still, a stranger to myself, unable to break the silence. It wasn't that I didn't want to confront them, part of me did. Part of me wanted to scream, to demand to know how this had happened, how we had gotten here. My mind screamed for action, for clarity. But my body refused to respond. My limbs felt heavy, useless, as though they no longer belonged to me. The seconds stretched into what felt like eternity, and the longer I stood there, the more I felt like I was disappearing into the walls, becoming part of the very fabric of the house that had once held everything I knew. I thought they would notice me eventually. He would turn, his eyes would meet mine, and the guilt would flood his face. She would jump back in shock, the color draining from her cheeks. But that never came. Instead, they remained in their own world, unaware of my presence, unaware of how the room had changed forever. He didn't see me. She didn't see me. And I realized something then, something that hit me harder than any confrontation ever could. I didn't want them to see me. I didn't want to be a part of this moment, this reality. I didn't want to be anyone's victim. I didn't want the tears, the anger, the words I didn't know how to say. I just wanted to be invisible. To escape from the reality that I was now witnessing. It was then that I understood, I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was numb. Numb to the shock, to the betrayal, to the lies that had been woven between us. But not angry. Not yet. I thought I should feel angry, of course I should. But I didn't. Not in that moment. There was a strange peace in my numbness, in the way I had stepped outside of myself, in the quiet recognition that there was nothing I could say or do to make this moment any less real. It was happening. And I wasn't part of it anymore. Time had lost its meaning. There was no urgency. No need to rush to a decision. In some strange way, the stillness around me felt almost like a reprieve. I could step away from it all. I could leave it behind without saying a word, without ever confronting them. I didn't need to know why. I didn't need answers anymore. I just needed to walk away. The woman, her name, her face, everything about her felt so foreign to me, still lay there beside him, her presence in the bed so natural, so intimate. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to hate her. How could I? She wasn't the one who had promised me forever. She wasn't the one I had trusted. The fault wasn't hers. It was his. It was his betrayal, his lie, his broken promises. She was just a consequence of it all. I took a step back, quietly, as if I could undo everything just by moving. I didn't want them to know I was there. I didn't want to confront them. Not yet. Not now. And as I moved away from the room, away from the life I had built, I felt the last shred of what I thought was real slip away. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know where I was going. My feet carried me without thought, down the hallway, past the rooms that had once been full of our shared memories. The house felt like it was crumbling around me, and I was powerless to stop it. I left the door slightly ajar behind me. I didn't close it. I didn't need to. I stepped outside into the evening, the fading light of the sun casting long shadows across the ground. The world outside felt impossibly calm, too calm for the storm I had just witnessed within the walls of my own home. I could hear the distant hum of traffic, the chirp of crickets, the soft rustle of the wind in the trees. But it all seemed so far away, like I was watching it from a distance, from a place I could no longer reach. I stood there for what felt like hours, though I knew it was only minutes. My body still felt numb, detached from the reality around me. It was like I was in a dream, moving through a world that wasn't quite mine. The house, my house, was still behind me, its windows dimly lit, but it no longer held any comfort. I didn't know what I was supposed to do now. I had never imagined that I would be in this place, standing outside my own home, not knowing where to go, not knowing what to feel. My mind was spinning with thoughts I couldn't grasp. Was I supposed to go back? To confront him? To demand answers, or was I supposed to walk away, to never look back? But I couldn't move. I couldn't make myself do anything. The decision felt so impossibly heavy, like standing at the edge of a cliff, unsure whether to leap or turn back. I had never imagined that my life could split into two paths so suddenly, so irrevocably. There was no going back to what I thought I knew. The woman, the betrayal, the trust that had shattered, everything had changed in that instant. I didn't know if I was supposed to feel anger. I didn't know if I was supposed to cry, or scream, or rage against it all. But none of those things came. I only felt a hollow ache, like a piece of myself had been taken without my knowing, leaving a space I couldn't fill. The sun sank lower in the sky, its light turning the horizon into a soft pink and purple haze. It was beautiful, and yet it felt so wrong. How could the world go on as if nothing had changed? How could the sun still set, the night still fall, when everything I had known had been shattered? I thought about turning back, about going inside and demanding some explanation, some truth that would help me make sense of it all. But I couldn't do it. Not yet. Not now. There was no way to fix it, no words that could undo the years of trust that had been broken. So, I stood there. And for the first time, I realized that I didn't know what to do next. I didn't know what the next step was. I had no plan, no direction. I was caught between two lives, two realities, and I couldn't decide which one to walk into. I glanced back toward the house, the door slightly ajar, the faint sound of laughter still echoing in my ears. It felt like a memory, something I could never return to. And yet, I couldn't leave it behind. Not completely. For a long time, I stayed outside, in the quiet evening, with the uncertainty of everything ahead of me pressing in. The air around me was still, but inside, I was anything but. And that was the truth of it. I had no answers. No clarity. Only silence and the weight of the unknown.
As I read through the story, my chest tightens with each word. There's something so deeply raw and human in the way the wife experiences the discovery of her husband's betrayal, the numbness that consumes her at first, and then the unbearable silence that stretches out before her. I feel like I've been transported right into her shoes, standing there in that doorway, paralyzed, watching the life she thought was hers shatter in front of her. The author really captures that moment when reality hits you, not with a loud bang, but with the slow, crushing weight of realization. The way she doesn't know what to do, where to go, or how to feel, it's devastating. It's not anger, not rage, but that overwhelming sense of being lost, of losing something you didn't even know was so fragile. That numbness, it's like a shield that doesn't protect you, but just makes you feel empty, unmoored. When she steps outside, the silence, the calmness of the world around her, it's like everything keeps moving forward, but she's stuck, unable to move. She stands there, not knowing where to go next, as the world continues to turn. It's such a powerful image. It feels like that moment after a storm has passed, and you're left in the wreckage, not knowing how to rebuild or if you even want to. I can't stop thinking about the final line, the weight of the unknown. It's haunting because it's so real. It's the space where we all end up when we face the unchangeable, the things that can't be fixed, the decisions that don't have easy answers. What do you do when everything falls apart? There's something beautifully tragic about how the story ends, not with a dramatic confrontation, but with silence, with uncertainty. It feels like the beginning of a new, painful chapter in the wife's life, one she never wanted, but one that is now inevitable. I don't think I could even make a decision after something like this, either. What can you do when trust is shattered? Where do you go when your foundation has crumbled beneath you? I'm left thinking about those questions long after I've finished the story, and I feel an ache deep in my chest, like I've lived through that pain, even though it wasn't mine to bear.